Hey guys, Thomas the Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, and I'm here to review It Chapter 2. This movie is a nearly 3-hour movie, and this will be a spoiler review, although I am a bit late, so I guess that won't be too warranted to say, but whatever. Anyways, this movie picks up where we left off with Beth, the lady, talking about what she wants to do in her future, and so on and so forth. But we cut to 27 years passing, and we get this little setup of this little carnival. These two guys are like hanging out. They seem to be dating relatively in the carnival area. But as they get ready to leave, they get beat up by these pretty generic bullies. And one little Adrian guy gets thrown into the water where it arrives, that being Pennywise, and kills him. And I did see somewhere on Twitter of like someone complaining about the whole gay character thing and like, oh, homosexuals want more identity in their movies, and you get mad when they get killed off. Well, when they do get killed off, it does seem like an excuse to get rid of them, because, writing them is difficult to do. So, killing them is an easy solution to not have them in your movie. Or not have them in your movie for long, anyways. Nonetheless, a red balloon passes by, and more so go by, and we have our little setup to our characters, where we see Mike starting to call the others, what was their group name? The Loser Club. We have Richard, Ben, who used to be fat and is skinny now, Stan, or I think it was Stan was his name, or I think it was Eddie instead. Anyways, we see them all getting ready to leave and deal with all sorts of different circumstances into re-arriving, from Beth having to deal with her new abusive boyfriend. So they all start to run, and then we see that the bully character from the first movie also wakes up from the water, and we see his transition into the police station, and then growing up in prison, and then it sort of shows him getting a little bit of a leeway to get out, so that Pennywise can have a little bit of an assistance there. So they all meet up at this store, this eating store, and then they start like chilling like they used to, and they make a toast. But we see that one of them is not there with them. The character I actually just mentioned, Stan, turned out that he was the one who decided to off himself to not deal with this circumstance or situation at all. So we get our first little stuff of like the cookie fortunes, like have a bunch of various things come out of them. The group gets freaked out. And of course, when someone else comes to check on them, everything returns back to normal. And Richard was so freaked out that he shoved off one of his real fans, although he thought it was a fake. And him and Eddie get prepared to leave, as coming back here they feel like was a big waste of time, and all these frights are freaking them out too much. So they're trying to, the others are trying to get them to stay, Mike and Billy. So we cut to another like setup of what Pennywise is doing while the other group is like prepping up. We see him lure in this young girl from the circus and then take her out, eating and munching on her face or her neck area. On full display, it does not cut away. You see the munch and the blood and the hoo-ha-ha. So there's that. So we see the bully character. I forget what his name was. He gets out. He kills like this guy that was like keeping track of him. We have Ben talking to Beth. Ben was the fat character. Now he's like a bit more muscular. If I didn't mention that before. They start to move a little bit around. We get to see Mike and Billy make their way into the library, where Mike tells about how he stole this artifact, and this artifact is a new thing in this movie. It's sort of the MacGuffin of the entire movie. It's apparently what can kill Pennywise/It. And we see, we cut back to Beth talking about her nightmares and her dealing with that. And thus, after some more talkies, the Loser Club all reunites with, the ones that are there and head out. So they end up going back to this hideout where we get a few flashbacks in the movie, and this is like one of their next ones. And we have some more shenanigans happen, just fake scares here and there. We see back to the flashback, and Mike proceeds to tell them that they need to find the pieces of the artifact alone for whatever reason. Apparently, it's just how you have to do it, according to him anyway. So it shows a flashback of them splitting up. So they do indeed split up in the current timeline. We see Beth go home, and this is where we see that where a good chunk of the trailer came from, of her returning to the old lady turning into the big ugly monster and going booga booga booga. She sees it in more of a humanist form and then runs off. Richard goes to this arcade where he was starting to hang out with this other guy, or kid I should say, because it goes back to a flashback. But the bullies come and they mock him for being potentially gay, and then they just throw him out, and then it goes back to It/Pennywise coming down on him and then singing to him and then trying to do his thing there. We cut to Billy, who gets a cameo appearance from the writer himself, Stephen King. And he gets this bike, the one he had when he was young, and he gets flashbacks of his brother. What was his brother's name? Georgie! So, Billy hears his brother, Georgie, and then he talks to him, or he sees himself talking to Georgie or whatever. And he deals with that. We cut to Ben going to school. Getting into his flashback, we see flaming Beth chasing him. And we still see Richard wants to leave. But Eddie goes, while that's going on, Eddie gets his little inhaler. And we get a flashback of him talking, or trying to save his mom from this creature. So they do that. We cut to Billy, who, in the flashback with Beth, they kiss, so they kiss in the current timeline. And Richard's still ready to leave at this point. But we see that the bully has arrived from out of nowhere. He kind of just enters into the movie after he escaped. He kind of just knows the location and stabs Eddie. And Eddie stabs him back, and the bully escapes for the time being. But Billy arrives at the fair while this is all going down. And he's going to this fair because after he left for his little scene, he saw a kid that he was trying to warn earlier, and he knew that the kid was going to run out of time. So he goes inside this fun house, and then Pennywise indeed arrives in front of the kid. Once again, we see Pennywise kill the kid right in front of him this time. So Richard is driving slow. He's trying to head out, but then he passes by this church where he remembers Stan's speech about what his little I forget what it's called. I think it's a part of the Jewish, like, when you grow up and you're going into adulthood. I'm pretty sure there's the name for that, whatever it is. Anyway, so he ends up going in there instead of leaving. Mike waits for the others, but the bully comes out and attacks him, and then we have Ben taking him out, the bully, and then taking him out for good. So the others arrive and they all see this, and then they all meet up and get to the house where everything started, but then they get separated into groups of 3. Ben, Richard, and Billy, Richard, and Eddie see Stan's head, and the other 3, Ben, Beth, and Mike, see something else. So, the 3 guys see Stan, or his head anyway, and they have to deal with that. And they do, eventually. And the others have to deal with their own stuff. So they end up all going toward the sewer, and they go to the area where it all ended, near the ending where the floating happened. And they all go inside, and Eddie's like kind of getting a little left behind there, but they get ready to burn their little artifacts that they collected along the way, and what they refer to as the eyes of the eater go down into this MacGuffin, and it turns into a balloon and fills up the entire room that they're in, and it pops. So it turns out that Mike lied about all of this, or at least how it would end. And it depicted, the picture depicted them getting like stabbed in the process of doing this. So I'm assuming that it was some sort of sacrifice was what they were supposed to do, according to the MacGuffin anyway. So it chases them, Pennywise chases them in bug form, and we all remember in the original ending, the bug was taken out by a simple slingshot. And they even openly mock this when the whole Stephen King book about the ending not being good. So they acknowledge that in this movie, mocking it a little bit. So anyways, chases them around. They all get split up again, kind of. Pennywise is like trying to split his resources, going after Richard and Eddie, where they get to the door bit where they were in the first movie, and Ben and Beth are get separated, and they have to help each other out after dealing with their own little past traumas about the different things they went in through the first movie, the Chapter 1 movie, I should say. So they help each other out after they deal with their own little things, and then Billy takes on his former self, and then he's able to grab Mike. So in the process of going through this and thinking that they've defeated it after having it be impaled, Richard is like celebrating, but then he gets stabbed through the back. I believe this happened in some sort of variation in the original as well, where one of them died at the end. So Eddie grabs the spear that Beth had earlier, and then it's when it actually falls into the spike, and then Eddie is the one who is stabbed, like, through the chest, though. Like, Richard was, like, stabbed in the shoulder or something. Eddie was stabbed in the chest, so he's dead. I don't remember if he was the one who died in the original It, but that is what happens in this. So they try to go down this narrow cave, trying to trick Pennywise into shrinking down into size. But instead they figure out the way to do that, to shrink him down to size, is to mock Pennywise. So they mock and they mock as he sizes down, and they're able to all grab his heart. And as Eddie dies, they break the heart, and they flee the sewer as it's falling apart, and even the house itself falls apart. So they dive into the water and into, like, and they clean up, and the loser club mourns their loss of Eddie. Ben gets his kiss from Beth, and we see them flash back as kids, and then them riding off as Billy reads Stan's note as we close off It Chapter 2. So, this movie, while long, definitely held interest. I think splitting it up was obviously the smarter idea instead of having all of the events take place in one movie. There were still a lot of flashbacks in this movie, but I felt like having them deal with their own personal issues and then go back into their own childhood, I think that was a good way of, like, pacing it out between, so that you're getting, like, each character, and it does have a better track of, like, oh, well, the loss now means that much more, because now we are actually following characters, which isn't something you get in a lot of horror movies. So I'm really glad that this, at least in that respect, this movie took its time to really establish, like, who these characters are now, what their traumas were. So you're even if you didn't see Chapter 1 necessarily, you can kind of gauge who these characters are still. So it definitely paced itself very nicely, even for a 3-hour movie. So while the length of the movie was long, it paced itself really well by captivating on each character and really showing things that, and yeah, you have to go through some, whatever, the not as important stuff, like the whole MacGuffin thing in the first place, and yeah, the ending is still a little bit cheesy. But, I think I do like that. I do think I like it a bit more. Just because we get to follow each character getting here. So yeah, I think this is definitely a solid movie. I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. And if you enjoyed my review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. Want to head over to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page. Any donations are greatly appreciated. And until next time, everyone, bye.